machine learning wants to be seen as a democratized institution, then engineers have a role there. But it is definitely not in another 1 or 2 years we can see a sudden explosion of MLOps engineers in the process of organizations investing on the buy solution approach. One of the important things that we have learned that we are trying to present to the world is there is definite need to approach the MLOps problem as a low-code MLOps problem rather than just treat this as a pro-code MLOps problem.
So Jana, the obvious next question is, talking more and more about data, we are going to naturally lead to the next question, which is, all organizations are today gung-ho about data sciences and machine learning, right? So the power of data, needless to say, is very critical to that process. But tell us a little bit about what kind of a talent, what kind of technology aspects should organizations look at when it comes to building data sciences assignments or working on data science projects and machine learning projects.
Let's assume that if a bank wants to set up their own MLOps seems like a cliche, but it wouldn't be wrong. Let's assume that if a bank wants to set up their own MLOps team, the MLOps team would have to be tied to the data ops team that we just now talked about, Vasu. Right. But let's assume that they have to do that. Unfortunately, it looks like it is still a highly sought after skill that you would be able to go find, like for example, a Python programmer or as an SQL developer. And based on my understanding, and I don't come from a machine learning background, but we are trying to get there. And what I've come to understand as an engineer is the skill may end up being a highly sought after skill for quite some time in the future. I don't think I can put my number on any range, but it is definitely not in another 1 or 2 years we can see a sudden explosion of MLOps engineers or people. I would still characterize this as an engineering problem. Now people want to see this as a scientist problem, but I think engineering is where the bottommost pyramid is going to have return on investment. So if machine learning wants to be seen as a democratized institution, then engineers have a role there. So if we need to have a lot of MLOps engineers, I don't think we are looking at that happening in another 1 or 2 years. So which means that they have to work with organizations which address MLOps problem elegantly, if I may say so. What I mean by elegantly is, I think if MLOps needs to be addressed correctly, like how I said for data ops, MLOps also needs to embrace the notion of tying themselves into the current digital transformation journey, where there will be clear release engineering practices established by either the CAO of the organization or CTO of the organization, and any MLOps activity that happens along with the rest of the data ops activity need to tightly get integrated into the release engineering process that the organization should follow. And what would have to be done to do that is the solution that organizations need to embrace, rather than taking a build team approach, is buy solution approach. In the process of organizations investing on the buy solution approach, one of the important things that we have learned that we are trying to present to the world is there is definite need to approach the MLOps problem as a low-code MLOps problem rather than just treat this as a pro-code MLOps problem. And what we mean as low code, we have taken a little bit of a digression there, which is the way today Microsoft Azure comes out with their ML designer. I have not seen that, but what I have heard is they have given a sort of a drag and drop sort of a capability where people can drag and drop stuff and then get the machine learning problem addressed. It's also one way to look at the low code. But what we have done, which in the very beginning you have asked us, we have taken a DSL approach, is we want to build a language that is not as pro-code as Python or Java or C++, but a language that is amenable for people who want to look at data as data rather than look at the problem as a data frame in Python. And the simple answer seems to be in SQL. So I think the way, at least I would, rather than getting into the technicalities, how I would address your question at a level of abstraction is, Organizations, rather than building teams, they should invest in buying solutions that offer MLOps as a low-code solution. Is how I would request organizations to see the means to build a good MLOps practice, at least in the near future. Because there are 4 classes of data, like how we talked about before. You got logs, and you got databases, which are extremely structured, and you got assets, which could be PDFs, which have got clearly organized information, and then you can also have photos and whatnot that are pure images. MLOps says about having access to all of them, having a data bank that has got access to all of them. So my suggestion would be to request organizations to build their MLOps practice by investing on a cost-effective solution that has got some low-code ambitions. Is how I would answer the MLOps question was.
Okay, so basically you are saying technology is more agnostic. You don't have to look at specifically, a specific algorithm.
It's a great question, and the answer came out of the realization that the underlying infrastructure that talks about machine learning is continuously churning. Vasu. What I mean by that is 5 or 6 or 7 years before, the world of deep learning, or for that matter, the world of GAN, wasn't that pervasive. Even for that matter, machine learning was not that pervasive. If you went to the Python world, you'd find scikit, but scikit would only operate on a single machine. But if you look at in the scheme of things today, you got TensorFlow that can operate on a bunch of machines, either using CPUs or GPUs. But you also have a fantastic competition that is being stood up by PyTorch. And there is also another dark horse by the name PySpark that not many people have noticed. These things don't need GPUs. They can operate on CPUs, and they can solve the problem better than scikit. So which one to go after? It is actually a conflation of choices. There are certain things that TensorFlow can do a phenomenal job that scikit cannot do. But there are certain things that scikit with a single core could be a lot more suitable for you. So who is supposed to take all these decisions for you? I think that's where when we say invest on a solution that gives you that some level of agnosticness, you can still get to solve this. You can get to still see this problem as a complex problem where you don't want to do drag and drop, because I think there is a bit of a limitation that you have with drag and drops, which means you need to have a combination of a system that offers the flexibility to solve the problem at a level of complexity that it requires that level of due diligence, but operate at a layer of abstraction where you don't really get, embattling. You don't really get into a situation where you have to battle, should I go with Python /Keras or Python /Theano with TensorFlow. You don't have to worry about all these choices because it's a phenomenally churning environment. You better let all of people who are supposed to focus on that so that you can solve business problems. I think that's the reason why when you said that you better be agnostic, the reason why you need to be agnostic is this.
Because it's very an environment
extremely churning.
Changing. Yeah.
Yes, boss. Okay. That's the reason why.
What are some of the key learnings that you have had in the data sciences machine learning world based on the projects that you have executed in the past few years?
There is tremendous opportunity for everybody, organizations that start, even for them, even for organizations for us, even though there are biggies here like Microsoft or AWS where you can go as they want to say. You can go to the cloud offering, just bootstrap a bunch of machines, take up their editor, do a drag and drop and get models ready and solve problems. Though there is maturity like that, there is also a scope for improvement, tremendous scope for improvement. So the significance in terms of opportunity seems unbound, Vasu. Now, having answered that, the learning, that is one learning that I have, which is to tell to the outside world that there is opportunity here. It is still an unexplored field. That is one of the learnings that we have. The other is, it's a fun problem. As an engineer, before we onboarded on to the few of the assignments that we had, it seemed like a daunting problem, but it is a fun problem right now. That is another learning. The third learning is, this problem requires discipline. Unfortunately, what we have seen happen is when data scientists are deployed on these endeavor, they help organizations understand that the problem that they have today can be addressed as a modeling problem, but since they come from a non-engineering background, they do not know what discipline needs to be put in to weaponize that model or productionize that model, so that model can be abstracted with an API and people can start consuming it. And how to ensure that you have continuous delivery of models that enable you to take advantage of the newfound data that you have and newfound problems that you have, so that you can see this as an engineering practice rather than as a scientific practice. That is another learning that we have. The other learning is the quantum of data that organizations seem to have is actually very high, that even they don't seem to realize. And it looks like it is going to be difficult for them to do that, and it requires outsiders like us to go to them and then tell, what, it is just not your database that is being maintained in Oracle that can give me perspective. It is also some data that is available in some Apache server log that I can tie along with this data and then come out with something meaningful. So the value of data is true across multiple places that organizations need to take into account. That's another learning. Another important learning is, I thought that the information that was out there in the unstructured assets, which could be PDF files and images, was extremely difficult to work with. But I think gates are opening there, and it seems to be pretty exciting that we should be able to go introspect an image, extract text from that, and then using the text we should be able to say that, hey, there's a 90% probability that this is an invoice document. So I can go back to another bunch of models and basically map that to a table and then basically create a row that represents this particular invoice. So there seems to be a tremendous opportunity for us to work on that realm too. So I think I have not covered everything. Okay, in addition to all this, the CI/CD thing that I continue to come to seems to be a practice that we need to imbue into this domain as a product problem rather than as a process problem. So I probably, if we have more questions coming, we'll be able to detail a few more learnings too. But I think these are all the ones that at least come to the top of my head right now, sir.
Okay. Jana, it was wonderful discussing with you and getting to know about your views and experience on data management, data sciences and everything. Thank you so much for your time, and thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. Thank you, Jana.
My pleasure, Vasu. I mean, the way I personally look at these conversations is, you offer me an opportunity to represent the kind of amazing work our team does, and it also provides us an opportunity to not worry about the political correctness of the perspectives that we have, and the freedom that I have to express certain opinions of us that find more of a technical value, right, that I hope comes out correctly. That way people can take whatever value that come out of them, and this is a wonderful opportunity for us to present this perspective. So the pleasure is actually mine, because I represent a boatload of engineers who work along with us to take this further. So thank you so much for asking these questions.